Welcome back, Raw Thoughts listeners, to another week where I bring on guests and we just talk about their lives, where they've been, where they're at, and where they're going. I want to thank you for just coming along in this journey, starting the new year and just being able to have goals and aspirations and showing, what it's like to really have that momentum behind you. Another week of podcasting. Like, it's still amazing to me, and I wouldn't be able to do it without the listeners of you. So I want to make sure that you are liking, following, and subscribing to this podcast and making sure that every week you get to listen first up of the guests that I have on. I'd also encourage you to head over to my website, rawthoughtspodcast.com, and you can send me messages. You can see all of the guest information that have came onto the podcast. If you would like to reach out to them, their information is on there. So I encourage you, if any of these podcasts have really kind of resonated with you, reach out to the people. That's what they're here for. Today I have Kristin. We actually met earlier this morning, and I had a guest that unfortunately was not able to make it. And I just texted her. I'm like, hey, you had a great story that we talked about at coffee this morning, and do you want to come on? And she said yes. So welcome, Kristin.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
Absolutely. So this podcast will already, or by the event that we do, it'll already be past, but we actually get to speak at an event together, which is super exciting. And that's kind of how I met you.
Yeah. So I'm planning an event called Why Not? It's a speaking event. I've wanted to be on the stage as a motivational speaker for a very long time while I was pursuing my other career. And so reached out, asked you to speak with us, and very excited for that. And I feel like we completely met each other's energy today and have a lot of the same values and visions of life. And I think that's how we connected and why we connected, and gave each other both those goosebumps about the excitement.
Yeah.
And it's a really cool thing to feel in a room when you're with somebody that feeds into your energy and that ignites yours, that, makes your candle blow brighter, right? I like to say don't hang out with people who are candle blower outers. Right?
Yeah.
So I like when people ignite your candles. So that was a great connection. So going into the speaking event, what's brought me there is I've been an entrepreneur for a long time, and I started in the beauty industry. I've been in that for 20 years. I've had many salons and many ups and downs and failures, and that's the story we were talking about today. Was my last salon I owned was the big one. I feel like it was the big show, right? The one we work up to, the one the small ones lead us to. And at the time, I had sold one of my other smaller salons. I'd closed another one that wasn't doing well. And I decided to go into a bigger space and do the big one. And so I put all my eggs in that basket, all the aspirations, all the dreams in there, and all my savings as well. So the day I woke up and I had $13 in my bank account. And the reason that happened was COVID, right? Yeah. And so I couldn't do hair. I'd put all my money in there. We had construction had started. We were gutting this big 3,000 square foot space, and the SBA froze funds, and everything got shut down. And so I had no money and no way to bring it in. And so I remember having this moment, took me back to being 21 again, and living in Chicago in my studio apartment, working 2 to 3 jobs, doing hair and waiting tables and bartending and living on ramen noodles and dreams, right? Yeah. That's what I used to call it. And I thought, oh my God, am I there again? I have 2 kids now. I'm almost 40. Like, what is going on? And you just kind of have that moment. And I think that all the things I was doing leading up to that moment was preparing me for this. And I think we talked about that a little bit. Those little steps you do every day, those mundane steps you do every day. And for me, over the last couple of years, had been self-growth. I was reading a lot. I was listening to podcasts. I was learning that if I was going to grow my business and my company, I had to grow, right? Because I'm the lid of that. And so I was trying to better myself. And part of that learning for me was learning about how to bounce back. How to endure, how to have the tenacity, how to do those things. And so that was my moment. And that was when life tests you, right? I think that's when something great's about to happen. It's like you get punched in the face. It's like, really? How bad you want it? Yeah. You really want this? And some people will give up. But it's the love and the courage that you push through because you're in love with it so much. And I was so in love with that space. So I decided, okay, I can sit home and I can cry and eat some ramen noodles. Or is huge for me. I think there's always an or. There's always another option. Or I can pull my bootstraps up and go in that space, and I'm going to paint some walls and I'm going to put together some furniture. And if I don't know how to do it, I'm going to YouTube it. And I sure did. I learned how to do some really cool things, and I was installing toilets and grouting tile, and I would just turn my music on and I would just jam out. And it just got me through those couple months waiting to find out when I was going to get the money to do this. The stress of that, it was big, but I knew that this was the right thing for me to do.
Leading up to all of those things, why was it like a bigger salon, bigger everything, right? Like what made you decide like that was going to be your next thing?
So the first salon I opened was in 2008 during the recession. I like a challenge, I guess. And that was 1,000 square foot. I had 4 chairs. I eventually expanded into a few more chairs there. That one, I always knew I wanted to open a salon. I started beauty school when I was 19. I started doing hair at 20. And even back then, I knew that I wanted to open a salon. And my goal for myself at that time was by the time I'm 30, I'm going to open my first salon. And ended up doing it at 28. It was a huge thing for me. I had no clue what I was doing, but it worked out and I did it, right? And then I sold that one. I moved back home to Chicago for a while. My dad had had a major heart attack, and it was really scary. We were gone for 4.5 years, came back, and I still had this drive. I really loved owning a salon. I wanted to do it again. And this is where synchronicities in life happen like crazy, and I totally believe in them. So the first salon I had was called Tanzanite, and it was on 9th Street. And I sold it to a friend of mine who worked for me as an esthetician. And she's kept it, and now she's moved it, and that's where I work now, actually.
Oh, how fun.
So when I came back, there was a different business in that space. And about 6 months after I came back to Boise, I was still rebuilding clientele. I'd been gone for 4.5 years. And a friend of mine sent me a picture of my old space, and it had a for lease sign in the window. And she said, oh my gosh, you have to get back in there. And I thought, this is meant to be. So that's what I did. I got back in that space, made it happen again. It was still on the smaller scale. I had this vision that I wanted to open a blow-dry bar. I'm from a big city, and when I lived in Chicago for 4.5 years, I worked at one a little bit while I was there helping out a friend, and I knew it was a great idea. Boise just wasn't quite there the first time I lived in Boise, and so I wanted to try it out. So I did it on a small scale first, sublet a small space to test the market. It started to go pretty well. I just had this feeling I needed a bigger space, and the space I was in just wasn't working out anymore. And I just thought I could impact more doing a bigger space. So I was walking down the street one day on that block, and there was this space with a for lease sign in the window. And I called my friend, and I just believe when things happen and the ball just rolls so easily, it's meant to happen, and you just got to keep going with it. And when you hit friction, that means something's not right. It's not aligning. And so it started to happen, and yeah, I just felt like this was where I was supposed to go. I wanted to keep going. You know, I'd kind of started checking all the boxes in the beauty industry career. I did platform art. I traveled to hair shows. I taught in salons. I taught at schools. I've had these salons. And now this is the next big step. And even when I was in there doing that, I was feeling the pull still of motivational speaking and writing a book and helping others and life coaching. And that started to really take off, the life coaching and being more well-known. And in my self-improvement life journey of how many people had helped me by listening to their podcasts, reading their books, following them on social media, I wanted to start doing that for people. But at the time, I'm behind the chair 6 days a week and running the business,
right,
and having children. I don't know where all that time would come from. So when it came time to sell that big one, which was a big heartbreak for me, but I do believe that you can't make space for other things until you get rid of things that need to go. You know, it's like trimming your rose bush. Right. Even when it looks healthy, you got to trim those roses back, or new ones they're not going to bloom. So if there's not space, those things can't grow.
How was it selling something that you had invested not only so much money, but so much time into?
It was a loss. It was seriously like mourning a loss. It was in the middle of a crazy time in my life. I was very stressed out with a lot of other personal things in life, with work, with staff, because not only with going through COVID as a business owner, did we go through funds and money and struggle to pay lease, people being scared to come in and get their hair done, but I struggled with staffing as well. We're going through this big, huge new wave of every company having trouble with staff. And so that became a challenge. And all of those things just started weighing on me. And it was a really hard decision to sell it. It really was. I sat up until 4 a.m. on the couch. And we were just moving into a new house. And so it was this crazy day of me moving into a new house, trying to get these movers aligned last minute because closing date kept moving, and trying to figure out what I was going to do there. And then I get a phone call on my drive to the house I'm freaking out about because I'm rushing there to meet the movers. Okay, we have an offer. You got to make a decision, and I want you to make it by the end of today. And I just said, I can't. I need till tomorrow. And so I just sat with myself and my thoughts in a notebook and pen, and I wrote until 4 a.m., just what to do. And It came to me that it's time to let it go. And it's just a business. Because I was so emotionally attached to it, because I'd put all that work in and the thought behind it and the design and that space was me. And then I thought, no, that's a space. That's not me. And it's time for me to move on to bigger things. And you know what? If I want to do it again, I've done it before. I can do it again. I could open a salon next week if I wanted to. But I just think that life was telling me, it's time. It's time to do those other things you've wanted to do for so long and stop talking about it, and let's do it.
Yeah. With you closing the salon, what has that allowed you more space to bring into your life right now? You have the event going on. You have all these things, but where is your time spent now?
So the first few months was probably me sulking a little bit.
That's fine. Grieving happens.
And you have to let yourself grieve. Because here's the thing, and I can say this, it was a failure for me. It was, and that's okay. It wasn't making money. It didn't turn out the way I thought it was going to turn out. It didn't take me where I thought it was going to take me. And I think it's so important to be okay with failure, because that's where we grow and that's where we learn. And I needed that lesson. I needed to learn. And I learned a lot, and it created the space for me to learn that, right? And you get stuck in one career industry for 20 years, and you start to feel like, oh, I'm mastering this. I got it. And so when that one didn't work out, it was like, I need to reexamine this and what went right and what went wrong, right? And the other side of that was I had time to be at home. I got to breathe. I took care of my health last year. I had a lot of things going on that I was ignoring and pushing back. I was losing weight. I was just a lot of stomach issues, just a lot of health stuff that I needed to go get taken care of. And so I made it kind of the year of mental health and physical health for me. I did a lot of journaling. I started writing. Sometimes I just walked around my house what I should be working because I used to work 6-7 days a week, and I had cut back to 2 days a week at a friend's salon, and the rest was at home. I got my house put together and unpacked. I got to take my daughter to school and pick her up every day. My son, who's a teenager, who we sometimes dismiss as though they don't want to spend time with us anyway, even though he still wasn't hanging out with me, watching movies or anything, he had mentioned how it was nice to have me home. And so those were all the things that I was finally able to do. Most of my son's life, I'd been owning businesses and working like crazy. And so, I only have him for a couple more years at home. And so that's been really nice to be able to do those things for myself.
That's awesome. Where do you see yourself as you wrap up that part of life and open up for others? What are you hoping to open up for?
I want to open up and help other entrepreneurs and business owners understand that we do have challenges, and that's okay. That's a big message for me is learning how to fail and fail forward. As long as you're failing forward and you're learning and you're growing, then you're doing the right thing. I mean, some of the most successful people have the biggest failures, and you just got to keep going forward. Doesn't matter where you come from. You can create your life however you want it to be, and you can start a new chapter anytime. A new era. And that's what this is for me. And I see myself really helping others, whether it's through podcast or my speaking events, reaching out to other speakers to inspire, helping people believe in themselves, no matter what it is, whatever they want to go after. And just I feel like I've been doing that for people one-on-one behind the chair. Honestly, I have really special connections with my clients, and that means the world to me. And they've taught me so much. And I just feel like life's pushing me in this, like, it's got to be bigger now, Kristin. It's got to be on a bigger scale here. Like, it's time. It's time to get in front of a bigger audience and help more people in a different way.
Yeah. What would your goal be to like truly be able to help them? Because I think a lot of people, and I'm guilty of this too, and I don't think it's a bad thing to be guilty of, but we do want to help in so many different ways. Mm-hmm. What is your aspect of wanting to help people?
I want to pull out of people what their true gift is. And I want to pull out of them that you are capable. You are a whole person. And it doesn't matter what happened to you in the past. You're not responsible for the shit that happens to you, right?
Yeah.
But you are responsible for who you become. And you got to grab that, and you got to take ownership of that, and you got to go for it. And it is inside of you, and you are capable. And we've all been hurt, and we've all had failures, or we've all had things happen to us, and that's okay because you're still great.
Right.
And so for me, I think that I have a gift of pulling that out of people and being somebody that people can truly open up to and feel comfortable around.
I definitely feel that, obviously a lot of people can't feel our energy in the room, but I felt that this morning when I met you, because I remember walking, in the door and having a bright smile, and you just don't find that very much nowadays, where it's okay to make friends with a stranger. Like that has always been one of my quotes since a young girl, is like, strangers are just future friends. Mm-hmm. Like you don't know the gift that you are able to give until you start exploring that and really kind of start looking into that. How is that on a scale of having those one-on-one conversations versus almost your directing the conversations, like on a larger scale or a podcast like this? Like, what is that transition going to be like for you? Have you thought about that?
Yeah, I have. I think it'll be a learning experience. I do also think I love asking questions. And it's something I learned a long time ago. I think when we're younger, we're kind of in our own head and about ourselves, right? And as we grow up, we learn that you don't know everything, right? You don't.
Yeah.
And so the only way to learn is to ask questions. And so even in my career, evolved from, behind the chair, like, let's gossip about celebrities and People magazine, into tell me more about you. Why do you feel that way about it? Learning more about people. And so I think that is going to be a great tool for me moving into podcasting and being on a stage. But talking one-on-one, of course, it's going to be totally different. I do find myself sometimes when I am talking one-on-one, I get like really amped up, and all of a sudden my body's taking up the space, and I'm like, I get really excited. Just talking to one person, I'm like, okay, take it down a notch. We're talking to one person here. So I think that's going to translate really well when I'm on stage.
I think it 100% is going to translate on, well on stage. And it'll be exciting to, not only be able to speak alongside you, but also see the growth, because I know that you and I both talked a lot about that, of like, there is a lot of wisdom and there's a lot of knowledge to share by the questions that we ask other people, and I do think it's a true talent of curiosity. There's so much to learn from other people by the experience that they've gone through, or the failures that they have, endured. Yeah. Starting business, stopping business, making those choices, making that choice to say, you know what, there's actually more friction than I need in my life right now. It's telling me to let it go. And within that self-recognition is where you can really start, I would say, guiding your life in what you want to do.
Yeah. I think there's always signs and synchronicities in life that are presented to us. There's magic all over the place. And I love this. And as soon as you learn how to open up your mind and your heart to that, it starts showing up in the coolest ways. And one thing that I tell people to try that I learned was just a fun way to start doing this. Because a lot of people are like, what are you talking about? Right? What does that mean? Start looking for a heart every day. Mm-hmm. In nature occurs just in a natural way. Now, if you see one and it means it gives you no feeling, then it's not a synchronicity, right? If you get a feeling from it, it's a synchronicity. And so that's where kind of signs and magic happen there in life. And life is so beautiful. It really is. And it can be, but you have to have that mindset to think about that. Another thing I've started to do to train my brain again to kind of start manifesting things and really putting out in the universe what I want is every morning before I do anything else, I write down the things I want. And it can be 3 things, it could be 5 things, it could be 8 things, whatever it is. You just write it down before the kids wake up, before you look at your email, before I open any devices. That is what I do. And then I meditate, then I have my coffee, and then I start to check email, and then I start to do the things. Because really, once you open up your phone or you open up your computer, you let the whole world in, and there goes your visions, and there goes what you want in life, and it's about what everyone else needs from you. It's like you just let 100 people in your bedroom when you start looking at your email. Buy this, talk to me, I need you to do this, right? And so if you can shut that down and really focus on the things you want in life, it's great. And it works really well because it puts your mind in this place to start looking for the signs, to start thinking about those things every day, to say yes to things like, hey, do you want to come on my podcast today? I just met you. And it's like, okay, because I've been writing the things I want. The speaking event to go great is one, right? A good turnout, meeting great new people, having focus and inspiration this week has been big for me. And meeting you today really inspired me. And I mean, the things, they come.
Yeah. It is so true. And, my last guest, Sarah Cortez, we talked about this exact same thing about manifesting and writing it down because then it's out in the world and then you get to start, talking about it. And it's incredible because I had, a really good connection with my sisters recently. And we talked about this too, of once you start telling other people, it does open it up so naturally for things to just fall into place, So I had this really great connections with my siblings and I realized I really love to read out loud. It is, I don't know what it is. And then I started thinking back, about the synchronicity. It's I remember in 2nd grade, I actually read books on a recording tape to then the kids that needed more help, they would actually listen to those tapes. And they would read along with my voice. And so it's all of these things and talking about, writing a book for children. Mm-hmm. I want to start writing books for children on emotions. And then, today I had said that to somebody else and a character popped up. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And then the more you just start talking about it, it's that momentum that just starts coming, but the snowball effect for sure. You can have that snowball effect in positive ways, and you can also have that snowball effect in negative ways.
Absolutely.
It's our choice to decide which one we're going to go for.
Yeah. And every choice takes you either towards it or away from it. And if you talk about negative things and you say, oh, my life's hard, I'm cursed, all the things, I just never have good luck, then that's exactly what you're going to get. You're going to get what you ask for. So when you start talking about exciting things that you want to do, those things are going to come up and you're going to meet those people that may help you get there. You're going to see the things that help you get there. That's super exciting. I can't wait to read your first book.
Yeah.
It's going to be so good. I think that's so well needed for children.
Yeah. And in talking about the speaking events, when I got reached out to, a few weeks ago by Sarah Brewer, I was like, absolutely, yes. I'm a yes person, right? Yes, I will do this speaking event. And even just thinking then, I want to do more of these. I want to be, yes, the podcast is getting in front of people and talking to people about their lives and their stories and these things. But I want to also be kind of front and center, I would say. Mm-hmm. And then I got asked by Mo, which he was a guest, and it was just incredible where it's when you start putting these things in the universe, if they're meant for you, they will come around.
Absolutely.
They really will.
Yeah. And the manifesting is huge too. For me, I use visualization on that sometimes as well. Guided meditation visualization. When I opened my second son, I did this a lot. Every night I would do this meditation and it would take you, down the stairs, through the meadow, and it would have you visualize what you were going to walk into, what you wanted. And for me at that time, it was turning the key to my salon and walking in the door and feeling that space as my own. And I did that every night for months. And it became a reality. And the mind is so powerful. We were talking about that a little bit earlier, how powerful our minds really are. And we just don't use them that way. And once you learn how to do it, and that's what I'm saying, looking for hearts, writing things down, talking about them, those are the small ways you can start to get there. Because I think sometimes people like you and I, we understand manifesting. We've been studying it. We live it. But when you tell some people that, they go, well, what does that even mean? How do I even do that? So I think it's fun to give people small steps, small tips to start it and to open that up. And I have some clients that I have start looking for hearts. And it's so fun because I see them like every 4 to 6 weeks and they come back. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm seeing hearts everywhere. So it's been really fun to share that with people. And I can tell when you talk about this book thing, like I just have to push more on that because your face lights up so much when you talk about that. And I think that that's another gift that I have is I can see when people really light up. And I think that's a big thing too, to help pull that out. When I can see that little body language, that little light, I was like, okay, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Let's pull that out.
Yeah. He's going to be called the Peaceful Dragon. I was actually texting my siblings while I was coming here, and kind of the plot is going to be that, the dragon blew fire when he, was mad, and he would always get in trouble. And then he got introduced to yoga, and he had to learn how to become peaceful, and he could blow his, fire in positive ways. And I haven't figured it all out, but like that's been in literally since this morning.
I like it. Maybe he can light people's candles with his fire.
Yes. So it'll be like, okay, we don't blow our fire when we're mad, but we can, start a fire at the camp, or we can do, we can use our tools. It's not that it's a bad thing. It's just we need to be able to use them in the proper way. And I think, you and I had talked about this too, is that we don't really teach our kids, and I don't have kids, but we don't really teach them like, what is your emotion? How do you express that? Like when you actually are hitting your brother, is it because you're sad? Is it because you're mad? Is it because you're not vocalizing something? And I think so many times, they try to really ingrain reading books as children.
Yeah. And
if we can also implement, like, instead of, what do you want to be when you grow up? Do you want to be, a police officer, a cop, or, a doctor, veterinarian? Like, how about let's teach them about their emotions and start there.
It is hard for them to manage their emotions. They're going through so much developmental things, and, at certain ages, they come out in different ways, and sometimes it's hitting and biting and temper tantrums and all the things. So this morning, it's funny you would say my daughter sometimes wakes up cranky in the morning, and she's not fun to be around. And I can't even remember why she was mad at me, but she was mad, and she hit my leg, and I was just like, that's not how we show our emotion. You can be mad, but we don't need to try to hurt people when we're mad. So I think you're on the right track there. Because as a parent, sometimes it's nice to have a resource to be like, let's read this book about it, because I don't have the right words right now, and it's 7 a.m. and I don't have my coffee either. So this is too early to deal with this, right? So
I'll just be the auntie to all of the children, because I do. There's such a, it's funny that you say that, of like the light coming on, because I don't have children, but children have always been like, they just are such sponges, and getting to connect with them and open their worlds up. Like, what are they really, what is their perspective? Like they're trying to figure everything out. We're still trying to figure everything out, and we won't know everything, but like, what is their perspective on what is happening, and how can we help them?
And that's one of the biggest parenting challenges you just mentioned, was they're looking to us and we're still figuring it out, right? Especially with my 17-year-old son. I was 23 when I had him. One of my clients joked with me one day. She's like, so you guys grew up together? And I was like, yeah, pretty much. We did, right?
Yeah.
And so that's truly what raising children or being a part of a child's life, whether it's an aunt or a mother or a father or a grandparent, is like, you're still figuring life out and there's no handbook. So we have to just do our best. And I say a lot, like at the end of the day, especially on hard days with kids, it's like, well, hope I didn't mess them up too bad today. I did the best I could with what I have, and that's really all we can do.
And I think that even comes back to our own lives, of like, don't be so hard on yourself. Like you are only doing what you know with the tools that you have, and being resourceful and understanding that and asking for help. Like that is why it's okay to ask for help, because not one person knows everything about life.
Absolutely not. Or has all the right tools. And we've only been taught what we've been taught, and we only know what we know so far. So we do the best we can at that moment. And the way we talk to ourselves, we would never talk to other people that way. And that's where, a whole nother topic of self-love comes in. But I think it's very important as a person to do that and to think, would I be saying these things to my best friend, to my sister, to anybody? No, I wouldn't. And I got to give myself a break too. I heard recently to stop being mad at other people for who they're not, who you want them to be, right? And I think sometimes we need to turn that back on ourselves too. Stop being mad at ourselves for not being where we think we're supposed to be, or how successful we're supposed to be right now, or where we're supposed to be because we're this age or we're this blah, 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 blah. Like give yourself a break too. Don't be mad at yourself for where you're not at. As long as you're trying your best every day, you're doing great.
Right. And that's all anybody can ask for.
Yeah.
Is try your best with what you know and what you have.
Yeah. And just keep growing and keep going and do the work if you can. But some days don't.
Yeah.
Getting out of bed is enough some days,
Exactly.
And I think sometimes that's where we get caught up with, we watch too much, TikTok or Instagram where all these people are killing it and they're like, just keep going. And sometimes it's best to just do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
You just got to do that some days.
Yeah. It's actually, pretty interesting because there's a lot of people, that talk about my life. They're like, oh, you're doing this and you're doing that and you're doing this. And, you probably wake up super early and, especially with the new year, like, oh, to be successful, you have to wake up at 5 a.m. and you have to do all these things. Like, no,
I don't wake up at 5 a.m.
No, you do what is most aligned with you.
Absolutely.
And, one of my other podcast guests, like Anna Lee, she does human design. And this last year, I will say, has been one of the biggest self-growths of understanding what you need as a person. And for my energy type, actually, I need those slow mornings. I need those easy, kind of least resistance. And yesterday I didn't wake up until 8:30 and I sat and I did work and drank my coffee until 2:00. I hadn't showered. I hadn't brushed my teeth. Like,
I love it.
But guess what? Like, I was successful for that day.
Yeah.
And it made me feel how I want to feel. It was like, I got so much done. I was productive. I, got this, and this done. I didn't wake up at 5. Like,
yeah, you don't have to. Depends on your lifestyle.
Exactly.
I just recently started waking up earlier because my daughter wakes up at a certain time and our mornings were so chaotic and I had no time for myself. And like, I want to have some kind of morning routine. And some people, I got to get up at 5 and have a 3-hour morning routine. Well, that's not realistic for me. 30 minutes, 60 minutes is beautiful, but sometimes it's only 30 minutes and that's okay. That's, like I said, I'm writing my things down. I'm thinking about what is one goal I can do today to get me closer to my goal. You think about that. I do my meditation, which is usually like 8 to 10 minutes. It's a quick one. And then I make my coffee. And then it just sets my day up. Like you said, it just feels so good. And then I can start thinking about doing other things for others. But I think it's important to know, like you said, what do you need? Do you function on 7 hours of sleep? Do you function on 8? Do you need 10? Maybe you need 10. That's okay. How much time do you need yourself in the morning? Do that. Don't worry about what everyone else is doing. Or, I don't know, flip side of that. Maybe you sleep into noon, but you're up till 4 in the morning doing creative things and doing things for yourself because that's your time clock on your body. And I think that's super important. Yes, comparison is the quickest path to unhappiness. Don't compare yourself to others. Do what works best for you.
Yeah, exactly. What, besides your kind of morning routine, how are you really like the life coach and all of these things that you're learning, like how are you implementing them not only in your client's life, but also in your life and what you want that to look like?
So really focusing on where I want to go next, because I had to be okay. I had to, what's the word I want to say? I had to kind of accept that for a moment there, because I've been doing the same thing for a long time. Not the same, I mean, same industry, right? I've owned salons, I've done this, I've done that. Master at hair, kick-ass hairstylist. I can do any cut or color, bring it to me. Let's do it. I can do it. Any challenge, I'll take it on. And I had to like come to terms with, oh, you're a beginner again. Here we are. We're at step 1 and we have a new mountain in front of us. And it can be really scary or it can be really exciting. And so I know that in coaching people too, that I kind of had to do that to myself too. Like, okay, what does that look like? What are those steps? Let's look inside of ourselves. What are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? Where do you need to grow? Where do you need to learn? Okay, I'm going to look at the people who are doing the things I want to do and I'm going to learn from them, whether it's their podcasts or their books or their social media or local people I've asked to coffee to, can I pick your brain? I want to be doing what you're doing. How can I do that? And I had to take myself back to what was it like when I started doing hair and how did I get better? And so that's what I've been doing with that, is learning those things in that way and then doing them. And if I'm going to tell my clients to do these things, then I have to do them. And I want to try them out too. And I have certain different kinds of journals that I'm trying out, or different routines and different things that I hear. And, you know, writing morning pages is something that I've learned a lot about. But something I learned recently really cool about that was not only writing those morning pages, having a specific prompt to get you writing. And then this is really fun. I rip it up and put it in a bowl and I go on my patio and I burn it. And it's really freeing, because it just gets it out. I think that sometimes we get this like black tar inside of us, these like yucky thoughts or our doubts or our fears or any of that. And then you write it on paper and you can take it one step further. You can rip it up and burn it. And then it's this spiritual thing for me that I can just kind of watch it go away. And then it's out of my body. And then I'm free to create or think about whatever else I want to think about. And the prompt I've been using is, how can this be easy? And so, and at first you're like, I don't freaking know. You
Right.
get mad about it. So I heard it on a podcast. I listen to Mel Robbins all the time. Love her. And I tried it and it's really cool. And so I've shared that with a few people, but that's one thing I've been trying. So usually when I learn those things and I try them out myself and then, you know, see if that works. And some of those things will work for some people and some won't work. But I think that that's what's important for me to build my toolbox, like we talked about, my toolbox of being able to be a coach for people and being able to read people and what do they need and what's going to work best for them. Some people need to write down all their goals and be held accountable, and some need a little more leeway on that. And some need to be taught how to love themselves first before we can even write the goals. And a lot of times I start with values. I think that that's a good place to start with people and then grow from there.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because I think naturally something that continues to come up in my podcast is people's toolboxes, you know, and just showing them like you can do it. You can do it however you want to do it. You just need to start somewhere and figuring those things out. And, you know, the more and more I do these podcasts and share these stories, like it's really sharing other people's toolboxes and how can that benefit somebody else? You know, like you had said, like maybe being able to write something down, like, and if you're listening and you're like, oh my gosh, like maybe I should try that. Like I want you to, and I encourage you to like take that advice and write what you need to write and tear it up and burn it and like let it be, let it go, let it get out of you.
It works really well so I did this even before I learned that in my early 20s for my parents. I had, as we all do, I think, pent up anger because God forbid they did something wrong to us, right? Because they were doing the best they could with what they had, but you don't get it yet. So I wrote them letters because I had all this anger inside of me and it was coming out in these negative ways in my life. And I knew it was just not doing good for me. And so I wrote them both a letter. And instead of sending it to them, I did that back then. I ripped it up and I burnt it. And so when I reheard that, I was like, wow, that did really help. I'm going to do it again. But so again, if there's, if that's what it is, if it's somebody you need to forgive, because when we hold on to that anger, it's toxic in our own body and it holds us back. So even if it's that, like, write it down, write them a letter, rip it up, burn it. They don't ever have to see it. And it will just help you kind of move on from that and forgive them and forgive yourself too.
Yeah, absolutely. Where do you, and maybe you've answered this, but like, where do you really learn a lot of these? Like, just through life of, listening to the podcast and being able to coach your clients? Like, where, I think the word like life coach sometimes can be very broad.
Yes, it can. And I learned this recently from somebody local who I asked to coffee. I was picking his brain about kind of his journey, and he's built a company here, and he does coaching, a lot of business coaching and life coaching. He's spoken on stage. He's done a TED Talk. He's doing all the things, like I said, I want to do. And I think you got to ask those people because they're actually more than willing to help you and tell you. And he really pushed on me on a question. And when I did the podcast with Mo, same question came up, right? Who is your target? Who is your client? And I was so stuck on this because I'm just a bleeding heart, I guess. I want to help everybody and I'm going to help the world, And when I was sitting with this gentleman, he was like, no, but like, I get that. Like, you want to help everybody, but you really have to zero it in. You have got to zero it in on who that client really is and who you're really speaking to. Because he was also giving me advice for the speaking event. And who's that audience? And because to be successful, you got to find the right spot to hit the hammer, right? Because if you're hitting it all over the place, you're going to flail and be all over the place, right? So long story short, when I really listened to myself and what had kind of been on my heart from the beginning was entrepreneurs. And that's, in the beginning, I was like, I don't want to put myself in a box because I want to help everybody. But at the end of the day, that is what I relate to most. That's the journey I've been on for 20 years. And why shouldn't I help those people the most? Because those are the ones I relate to the most. And it's okay if I can't help everybody. Like, that's a pretty big population. So that was, I don't know if I just got off track there, but that's who I'm going after to help. And that helped me then learn to zero in on that. Right. And then once you find that focus, then you can really zero in on that and find the momentum there and the flow. Because when you're all over the place, you're so lost. Right. And it was like I'm standing on, and there's 10 trails in front of me, and I'm like, I'm going to do them all in 2 hours. Right? Yeah. I'm going to help everybody. And then I was like, no, pick one and do it right. So.
And I think on that too, just like with the salon, like if it doesn't end up working, you can change.
Absolutely. But if I don't try, then I don't know. And then I might not change anything, right?
Right.
So, and I think it's important to be uncomfortable. Like, it's okay to be a beginner again and be uncomfortable. And at first I think I was giving myself such a hard time about that. How I should know how to do this right away. And I was like, why should I know how to do this right away? I've never done that before. Yeah, in a different way, but not the way I'm trying to do it now. And being a beginner can be really exciting because you can learn and you grow, and you can't grow if you're not uncomfortable. And it's been a little uncomfortable because I'm building my Instagram for this, right? I can do a salon Instagram like no other. I know how to do that, but I started doing this, and then I'm trying to get in front of camera, and now I'm talking, and it was a mess in the beginning. I know I'm getting better, and I'm getting more and more comfortable in front of the camera, but it was good for me to be uncomfortable. And doing the speaking event, something I want to do, was like, okay, I want to do this. I'm just going to do it. Because I think that's what's exciting about life too, is like, just do it.
Right.
You know what? You might suck at it. And that's okay. But if you don't even try, then you won't even know. And then later down the road, you'll be like, God, I wish I would have done that. And I mean, I truly think if it's stuck in your heart and in your head, it's there for a reason and you're supposed to go after it. And it's just going to haunt you if you don't. Yeah. So I'm just putting myself out there and be like, you're doing what now?
You know what? I have always, it's funny because a couple of things, because I just saw my finger. Your event is called Why Not?
Yes.
And
that has a special message for me.
Yeah. And that when Mo sent me that, and I was like, well, I obviously have to. Like, that has been one of my biggest things of the podcast is like, why not start a podcast? And I think, the trails that you had talked about, if you're standing there and you're looking at all 10 trails, you're coming up with your own obstacles in your head instead of just trying one of them. And if you go down that road and you're like, nope, this is actually not what I expected, it isn't what I thought, it's not that you have done anything wrong or you have failed, but you wouldn't have learned what was down that road if you hadn't tried. So you go back and you go back to center and you start again.
Yes.
And it's totally okay to, maybe it's the last trail that you're like, oh, this is the one that I was supposed to be on. But I wouldn't have known all of those things that I learned from the first 9 trails,
Right.
if there were tiny little things that you kind of brought up. And so many people want to get stuck on on the why, like, why are you doing that? And then you dive in deeper, like, well, why? And I just want to be the voice for people that say, why the fuck not?
Yes, amen to that. It's true. Why not is the fact that you had that on your finger to me today is a total synchronicity, by the way. When you showed me that, I just was like, oh my gosh, we're in the right place at the right time for sure. So why not came to me from the person in my life I call my original dream pusher, and I'm going to try not to get emotional about it. So my Aunt Robin is very special to me, and she pretty much has raised me since I was young. She's like my second mother, and she's been my touchstone my whole life. And she has been terminally ill for the last 5+ years, and we have a very special relationship. Watching her go through that has changed my view on life a ton as well. And I told you I opened that salon 6 months after moving back to Boise, and then I wanted to open the other space, and that was only another 6 months later. And I had so many people in my life at that time going, why would you do that? You're crazy. You have no business opening another business. This one isn't even fully up and going. And I remember just driving down Front Street to work one day, and I called my Aunt Robin, and I was just in a tizzy, right? Just like, oh my God, what am I doing? And she just stopped me and she said, Kristin, why not? And I just went, oh my God, she reminded me of that. She'd said that to me before. She's the one that sat me down when I was in college at 18, and I was living with her at the time, and I was miserable, but I went because my dad wanted me to go. And she sat me down then and was just like, what do you want to be doing? You're not happy. Why not go after what you want? And I said, I want to go to beauty school. And she said, then do it. And so she's always, I call her my original dream pusher. She has just always pushed me towards that. And that's what I want to do for other people, because that is so special. And sometimes you just need that person to say to you, why the fuck not? Life is too short. Because let me tell you, my aunt retired, sold everything, moved across the country to be with her best friend. They had their bucket list of travels, and she never got to go on one. And so why not? Because you just never know. And so it's really special to me. And so when I thought about this event, someone said, well, what are you going to call it? And it just popped in my head, and I said, why not? Because if I can share one message, that's the one.
Yeah. That is incredible.
Thank you. I love you, Robin.
Oh. That is, and I think for our listeners, there's so many things that do what you want to do. Mm-hmm. You don't have to explain. You don't have to have it all figured out.
And stop asking people for advice who have never been there before, right? They've never been there, so stop asking their opinion and their advice. They don't even know the trail. They don't know what it takes, and they don't understand your heart.
Yeah. And I think that, leaving on that message of truly following your heart, being open enough to allow your own self to follow your heart. If college is it, then go for college. If it's not, then don't go. If it's starting a completely new career, start it.
Yeah. And it's okay to be scary. Actually, I think it's better if it's scary. Because if it's not scary, then I don't know. I think when it's scary, it's going to be great.
Well, and if it's not scary, then you have it all figured out. And what's the fun?
Yeah, it's too easy. And no one wants to be, you shouldn't want to be comfortable. all the
Right.
time. I mean, sometimes, yeah, fine, but
Absolutely. Well, Kristin, I do appreciate you coming on and sharing your story and what that looks like. And I know that we haven't been at the event yet, but this podcast will be out, and I'll definitely keep everybody informed on, how it went and what's going. And, hopefully we'll have another event to be able to tell the listeners to come and join and see. But I just really want to appreciate you, just the spontaneousness of meeting you literally at coffee this morning and, having a guest end up having to cancel, and guess that's okay. Like, we get busy and that's totally fine. But you just so willing to say yes to coming on and talking so quickly. I do appreciate that.
awesome. Thank you so much. I'm so glad it aligned today.
Yeah, absolutely. Listeners, I would definitely encourage you to reach out to both of us if you had any inspiration within this podcast. If you have something that you are just stuck on and need some motivational help, I think you have two amazing girls here that are going to be able to push you and getting you in the direction that you need to go. I would encourage you to head over to Instagram, to LinkedIn, follow, like, subscribe, all of the things. You know what to do. Sometimes it gets mundane for me to say, but I really, really, really do appreciate you guys giving me the feedback, giving me the stories of, my guests being able to impact you. So on that note, thank you for listening to another episode, and we'll see you next week. Bye, guys. Thank you again for listening to another episode of Raw Thoughts Podcast. I'd appreciate it if you could follow, like, subscribe, and share with anybody that you think would be interested in this. You'd also head over to my website at rawthoughtspodcast.com and see any other guests that have been on the episodes. You could also go over to Instagram and follow at rawthoughts.podcast. I would really appreciate it, and always send me a message if you're interested in being a guest or any feedback.